I'm going to change up pace just a little bit here. I'm trying to do name brand poets for you tonight. And the evolution of one of these programs is quite interesting. Anyway, I thought I would do something other than narrative verse, because narrative verse is largely passé. Everything now is the lyric, and of course that refers to a poem that expresses the poet's personal emotion or sentiments rather than the telling of external events. So I'm going to do about 3 of these for you. And this first one is quite respectable. It's by William Butler Yeats, who still is quite well read. This was published in 1892. The meter is predominantly iambic pentameter. Everybody remembers from high school. Yes, I see heads going. Yes, 10 syllables to the line. The even numbered syllables are accented. And a rhyme scheme usually, in this case, it's a little different. It's first and fourth lines of the stanza rhyme and the second and third lines rhyme. But oh, and in this word there's mention of fire, which implicitly is in a fireplace, which would require a pair of andirons or metal bars to hold up the logs to facilitate ventilation. I just thought I would mention that and say some of you heard the word bars and had other thoughts. But anyway. When you are old. When you are old and gray and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. William Butler Yeats, ladies and gentlemen, who died in 1939, won the Nobel Prize for Literature, in 1923. 103 years later, I have a 2-sentence poem that I thought I'd just skim through. It's entitled The Good Poet. It's written by Ellis Giordano in 1995, published in funnypoetry.com. A good poet in his day is rust and iron, tastes of old concrete pilings, does not lapse into beauty. Only a dull poet would seek out a flower instead of the electric whine of a garage door opening. The good poet. So lyrics are changing. And just to finish up in the same vein, because I was kind of looking for these. I'd start going down a trail and I'd say, well, now I need something else. I need something now. The New York Review of Books helped me out. May 24th, 2018, I just happened to have an old copy I brought on the trip. This author has been teaching at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, since 2001. His name is Peter Gizzi, G-I-Z-Z-I. Each line is 1 sentence. There are only 11 lines. There are a couple of fragments in here. Oh, and each ends with a period, unlike so much modern poetry. E.E. Cummings, in my opinion, should have been strangled at birth. Poetry, it should be an oral art form. And so it's helpful to have capitals and commas and punctuation marks. So that instead of wandering around helplessly, W.S. Merwin, of course, famous poet. Don't get me started. Some joy for morning. Now the connection with spring has dissolved. Now that hysteria is blooming, probably wisteria, says every day I want to fly my kite. Go fly a kite. Says, what's a grammar when you is no longer you? My world is hydrogen burning in space and in the fullness of etc. We're half done. Bear with me. I have read the news and learned nothing. I try to understand the whooshing overhead. But for a little light now. I didn't realize the tree was weeping. How was I to know that I'm alone? Last line, wild light. That is contemporary lyrical poetry, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not my thing, but it has very solid supporters. Everybody knows the name Billy Collins. Very popular poet, born in 1941, taught at the City University of New York, retired. And he was a poet laureate of the U.S. 2001 to 2003. And despite his credentials, I have very little in common with the sentiments expressed in this little poem of his called Introduction to Poetry. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. Introduction to Poetry, Billy Collins. Now, I must say, when I write a poem, I am asking a lot of the listener or the reader to invest their time in what I'm saying. So I am not real keen on this. And so, Billy, you bring all the poems you want, and I'm going to beat them to find out what they mean, because I haven't got time for your nonsense, Billy.